My name is Tyler Sadden, and I'm from Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and I presently live in Campbellton, New Brunswick. If what I'm saying here doesn't have a personal feel to it, then the purpose of this video is not going to go through. This video is for those people who are freaking randomly stumbling across a video on YouTube, or somebody sends the link, or a parent or whoever. It's for that person that has absolutely no hope. Because I was him. I was that guy with no hope. I was that guy that couldn't, get it right, couldn't do it right. I could work, I could weld, I could do things, but inside I was this dead freaking person that had nothing on the inside. And addictions is the sole thing that stole all of those things from me. So this is my story. I was introduced to drugs fairly young, drugs and alcohol, when I was only 11 years old. And it was something that I loved. I loved the drinking, I loved the drugs. And even though that first experience wasn't great, when you're 11 and you're drinking and you're doing drugs, the outcome is not going to be good. I didn't see my parents very often. My mom, yes, but my dad, I didn't see my dad very often. So that authority figure really wasn't there in my life. So I did my own thing. I basically did my own authority thing, and it wreaked havoc in my life. And after, drinking and drugs starting at 11, it just progressively got worse. I was addicted to alcohol virtually right away. By the time I was 13, 14 years old, I had already had alcohol poisoning, 3 or 4 times. And so I had already been kicked out of school and here and there, in trouble with the law, and everything else just kind of spiraled with that lifestyle of addictions. And it was a problem for me right away. I was in grade 8, grade 9 when cocaine kind of came into my life. And so that was part of my life for the next 20 years. I had to go to rehabs. I had got court ordered to rehabs. I had, because of the overdoses and because of, being in trouble with the law, I had to go to rehab quite a bit. So I went to quite a few rehabs to try to conquer this sort of addiction, this sort of thing which was leading me. And, I was completely, I don't know how to say it. I was completely submitted to the wrong things. I was completely submitted to the bottle. And I was completely submitted to the drugs. I'm just going to tell you this latter part of my addictions is because it's 20 years is a rinse, wash, repeat of addictions. 20 years of, the same thing. You can only say so much of that. I could tell you about all the overdoses, but that's not really relevant. I'm going to take you guys to the end of where stuff got real for me. So at the end of 2011, I had decided to quit my job. And over the next few weeks, things got pretty ugly. And I would say, probably for the next 4 weeks, I went on a good tear for the next 4 weeks. And I remember it was on December 23rd of 2011. And I just remember being in my apartment, and I had a bunch of, cocaine in front of me, and, some mushrooms and a bottle of gin and some booze or beer over here. And in my mind, I just didn't want to live. I didn't want to live anymore. And I had been suicidal quite a bit. I was a self-harmer for years before I even had addiction issues. And when I decided at the end of 2011 that, this is it for me. Like, I'm going to probably blow my head off soon, because I can't get rid of this thing. It's just there all the time. I get up, I drink. I get up, I do drugs. I messaged a friend of mine who I was living with, and the friend that I was living with, he was working down in southern part of Saskatchewan, and I made a decision to phone him, and he messaged me, and he said, are you all good? You okay? And I was just like, yeah, I'm not doing very good right now. And my friend in particular, he shut the rig down, came back up to Swift Current, which was about a 5-hour drive. And he came in the door and he looked at me, and I was pretty messed up, but he says, okay, Sades, you're okay. Like, what do you want to do? You want to go for a beer? Let's go for a beer. And so I remember with my buddy, driving down the road in his truck, and You know, you go this way, you can go to the bar, you go this way, you go to the other bar, or you go straight and you go to my dad's. And my dad's house was something that I had never really been to on a Friday night in my life, other than when I was a kid. And so I did go to my dad's house that night, and I remember, knocking on the door, and I remember my buddy, before I left his truck, he looked at me and he's like, "Hey, Sadden," he goes, "whatever you decide, I support you." And so he obviously knew for years that I had, had a problem. And so I remember walking up to my dad's door, and I knocked on the door on that December 23rd, 2011. And my dad answers the door, and he opened his door, he welcomed me in, and I didn't want to see him. I didn't really care, honestly, I didn't. I asked him, "Okay, where's my stepmom?" And because my stepmom was the one person in my life that was really real about my problems. She called the spade a spade. You know what I mean? Like, if you have alcohol poisoning at 12, you have an alcohol problem. That's what it is. And so when I was 5, she became part of my life. And she was very real with my life. When it came down to brass tacks and wanting to quit, she's the only person that I ran to. And I remember she came and she seen me, and I remember just hugging her at the top of the stairs, and I just started wailing. And I was like, if this is life, then I'm out. I'm done. I can't do it because this is too much. And so I ended up going to the emergency room that night because I was quite suicidal. So they decided to put me in I went in the psych ward. I was there for 2 weeks, and something really important in my journey happened at that point. And it was on January 1st of 2012. And January 1st of 2012 was a Sunday, and I was still in the psych ward. But I got invited to go to church, and I had never been to church other than weddings and funerals. So I thought, you know what? There's got to be something there. So I went. There was 500 people there, and it was packed. And I remember, you keep in mind, I was still in this rehab, or in this psych ward at the time. And I went into the church, and I could hear these people singing, and they were singing this one particular song, and it was called "Shout to the Lord." And I can't explain to you what that made me feel, because in addictions, you don't know feelings. You know happy and you know mad. The rest, they fall into one of those two categories. You're so out of tune with your emotion, you don't know what's going on. And so for me, I remember I was chewing a piece of gum, and I could just feel myself wanting to cry, and I could feel myself getting emotional, and I didn't know what to do. So I was chewing that gum as hard as I could chew that gum to show, maybe it was the fact that I thought showing this emotion would have been a form of weakness. And there's these people in front of me, and I'm like, you know what, I can't do this in front of these people. But what had happened is, after that, I had went home because I had had a day pass from the psych ward. And I went to my apartment, and I went onto the TV, and I typed in "Shout to the Lord." And when I typed that in, I sat there for the next probably 30-45 minutes and just wept about whatever this was they were talking about. And we talk about our higher power, we believe in this, we believe in that, or whatever. I just knew there was something different about this thing that this lady was singing about. And hearing all these people at this church sing to this Lord. And so for me, this was kind of like a one of the most important parts, if not the most important part in my journey of recovery, was that specific day and going to church for the very first time. And so, but it wasn't all just rainbows and lollipops. I didn't accept Jesus in my heart. I didn't accept anything like that. I was just, okay, there's something there. I don't know what it is. But in the next 2.5 months after that, going to church, I ended up going to a rehab, and I didn't have a very good experience at that rehab, but I'd already done it once. And it didn't really work for me, and I ended up leaving that rehab early. And for the next 2 weeks after that, I went on a pretty good tear. when I was in addictions, there was a few things that I had like these little kind of rules that I didn't break. You know, one of them was, you know, you never did drugs in the house where there's kids. You know, that was just one of my rules. I just never did, because I didn't like to be around kids like that. And you know, that was just one of my particular rules. Another one was like, you don't rip people off. If you're going to sell drugs, you sell drugs. You know, you don't rip them off. Anyways, so I remember we smoked about, I don't know, 6 or 7 grams of crack. And I was about to leave with the mom and with the lady, and we were about to go across town and pick up some more drugs. And before I was like, you know, I put my hand on the door to leave, and I heard a baby cry. And I didn't know that this baby was in the basement when we were smoking crack the last, you know, 2 hours. And I don't know if you remember in movies, or you see in movies where they kind of like the tunnel vision comes in and then things get a little echoey and stuff like that. I knew in that moment I was going to kill myself. Like, there was a few things good I could do in my life. One was weld, and one was party and do drugs. And I broke my rules. So I'm not even good at that now. And I don't have my job anymore. So what is my purpose on this planet? My purpose is not to do this, and it's not to do this, because I can't do this and I can't do this. And when I heard that young guy, Jaden, when I heard him crying, that's what happened in my head was that, you know, I knew that night something was going to happen. And I remember going across town to this other place, getting some drugs. No, I didn't get any drugs. I didn't get any. The guy had put them in my hand, and I never ended up getting any. And so when I left with the girl, I went back to my apartment, and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to go in, and I'm just going to get some stuff, and, you know, we'll leave after this. And so I ended up going home, and I shut the door and I locked it, and I texted her and I said, listen, I'm not coming. I'm out. And this lady, you know, bless her soul, because she thought that I was just holding out on her. She thought that I was just holding these drugs to myself, and which I wasn't. In that moment, I knew I was going to do something to myself. And so I remember going into my buddy's room, and he had a gun in his room, and I remember having the gun in my mouth. And I'm like, what stopped me from doing that was really, you know, my mom was my landlord. And I thought if I blew my head off, she's going to come and she's going to see all this, you know. And I remember just kind of putting the gun back in his closet. And when I looked down, there was a blade there, an X-Acto knife. And I grabbed that blade and I went into the kitchen and I carved across my wrist as hard as I could. And when I did that, it was immediate. There was blood on the roof. There was blood on every pulse. There was blood everywhere. And I made my way around the kitchen and back into the bathroom, and I was in the tub, and I remember my hand was kind of gibbled up a little bit, because I think I nicked some tendons in there and cut some tendons and whatever else. And I did the other one as well. And like, in that moment, I didn't really feel anything. I was just desperate trying to get away from addictions. I was just desperate trying to be done with this crazy thing. And when I cut my other wrist, I remember just being in the tub, and it was quite graphic. I mean, you can think you know what you see. You think from movies, and you think you know what it looks like, but I promise you, unless you've been on that blade end, you don't really know. And so, you know, when I did that one, I remember I looked down at my phone. My phone was on the edge of the tub, and it was 12:28 a.m. On March 28th of 2012. And, you know, there I am trying to like end my life in this tub. And like, in reality, it's my older sister's birthday. It was her birthday that I was trying to kill myself on. And, you know, that's a fairly significant date. That's a fairly significant time. And my buddy, when he messaged me on the phone, he said, I love you, bro. And so he knew something was happening as well. And so, like, after that, I blacked out. I fainted. And I don't know how I made it into the hallway, but I made it into the hallway. And then I remember being, laid out on the ground like this, and there's two, fairly significant puddles of blood that were by my left and my right. And I don't know how, but like bang, bang, bang. And there was the cops at the door. And then the cops, entered. And I remember this one particular cop taking one of my shirts and he like wrapped it around my arm. And he said, I remember him saying, "This is gonna hurt." And he just stood on my wrists. I stood on this one and another guy on this one. And from there, I ended up going to Swift Current Hospital. And then they took me right away up to St. Paul's for an emergency surgery in Saskatoon. And they repaired up my wrists, and after that I was in the psych ward in Swift Current for a few weeks. And in that time frame of being in the rehab, in the psych ward, my stepmom had came to me and she brought me this pamphlet, and it was for Teen Challenge. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, yo, this is for freaking teens. Like, I'm not going to a rehab for teens. And she said, no, it's not for teens. Like, you have to be at least 17 or 18 to go. It's just the name of the rehab is called Teen Challenge. And Teen Challenge itself, it wasn't appealing to me at the start, but what I liked about it was I was going to be there for a full year in the actual facility. And so what I did was I thought, okay, let's seriously take a look at this rehab, because I had done the 28 days. I had done all these other rehabs, and they didn't do a whole lot for me. Not to say that they don't do a lot for people, but they just didn't do it for me. I needed something different. I needed something else. And so I went to Teen Challenge, and in Teen Challenge itself, it was hard. You're there for a year, but it turned out to be 3 years of my life was in that particular rehab. But on my birthday, May 1st of 2012, I ended up going on. It was my 29th birthday. I went into that rehab for a year, and shortly into that program, I accepted Jesus into my heart. And part of being in that rehab was, going across different churches and telling your story and talking to people and connecting with people and conversing with people and, all of these things. And that really, for me, was one of the most important things in my recovery was, without a doubt, was accepting Jesus into my heart and giving me a hope in a different direction. Because as far as making money, making everything in the world, I had already done that. It was something else missing, and the thing that was missing in me was my higher power, which was Jesus, which is Jesus. And so, after accepting Jesus into my heart, it wasn't all just rainbows and lollipops. It was hard. Like it's so much easier to fall back into addictions than it is to stay out of addictions. If you walk the same path for 20 years. If you walk this straight path back and forth for 20 years, there's going to be a big rut there. So it's so easy to fall back into that rut, So it's the same thing with smoking crack or drinking beers or whatever. If you do it for X amount of years, it's so easy to fall back into that path of destruction. And I'm not going to say that it's inevitable, but the pull is always there. The pull is always there. Now, the more you walk out your recovery, the less the pull is. But it's not to say that it doesn't happen. It's not to say that it won't happen, but the pull is definitely there. My biggest struggle in my life was addictions, by far. It was the hardest thing for me to overcome. So when I did conquer that, when God helped me through that, it became the best gift for me to have. And so for me to sit here and give back, because the best gifts that you have are not meant for yourself. They're meant to give away. So for me, that's why I like to give back. I love to talk to people about addictions. I like to go to the rehab and just be real with people, because that's what people want, is realness. People want to be real. People want to see a real you. So I couldn't sit at this table and tell you, I became who I am today because I just made the right choices. God took my heart and transformed it into something different. God took my life, which was just this absolute mess, and he made it into a story that can help people. So, you know, butchering your wrists and having guns in your mouths and, you know, always being in trouble with the law became a testimony of something great, became part of a story that was so much bigger than just this. And so again, this is for that person that is stuck in that area, and it's an option. There's always an option out, you know.